Welcome to Universe of Love and Anime, where love stories are told with all your heart. Before we begin our emotional journey today, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone who needs a story that is healing, hopeful, and humane. Each of your support not only motivates us, but also spreads love to more people. Thank you for choosing to stop by Universe of Love and Anime, and now, let's listen to this heart-touching story. Growing Heart. Juan had forgotten to mute the background audio on his WhatsApp live photo, and what should have been a simple, forgettable post became the beginning of the end. A girl's sweet and playful voice echoed through the clip, crystal clear. "You ruined my lingerie again. Can you stay with me one more day? I don't want you going back to that old hag." That voice wasn't mine. I didn't even need to see her face to know what had been going on. One of his friends had commented beneath the post, trying to warn him. "Weren't you afraid your wife would hear it and make a scene?" One had replied with a sneer, one I could practically hear through the screen. He thought he knew me, thought I'd cry, scream, threaten to leave like I used to. But this time, I just pressed the like button and said nothing. When Juan called that night, his voice was the same calm, distant tone he always used. "My flight's been delayed. Don't wait for me for dinner." In the past, I would have asked what time he'd be home, offered to wait, maybe told him about my day to help pass the time. But now I only responded with a quiet I didn't even say, "Take care." I already knew he was lying. The night before, I had seen his latest tweet. Strange, coming from a man who refused to make our marriage public. He had never posted about me, not even on our wedding day. And yet, there he was, posting a casual update. Curious, I tapped the post, ready to like it until I heard her voice in the background. "You're going to report to that old hag again? You ruined my lingerie. Stay with me another day." It was followed by Juan's low, amused chuckle. "I'll buy you a new one." He had never spoken to me like that. Back when I used to whisper sweet things to him, he would always frown and cut me off, cold and reserved. "Emilia, be a little more demure," he'd say. He'd always acted like he was above such things, untouchable like a flower on a mountaintop. But now, hearing his voice soaked in flirtation for someone else, I realized he had just never cared to speak to me that way. The next morning, after deleting the tweet, he texted me with a weak excuse. "I'll bring you a gift when I get back. What do you want? A peace offering, or perhaps a test to see how I would react?" I didn't reply. I simply watched his moves, silently cataloging the lies. I had loved Juan to a fault. For 3 years, I clung to him despite the cold, despite the way we tormented each other with our silence and bitterness. Even on our wedding day, he hadn't smiled. I had thought love meant enduring. But I woke up one day and realized I was tired. Just tired. Of trying, of hoping, of waiting for warmth that never came. So I didn't cry, didn't scream. I just let go. Juan came home around midnight. He looked surprised to find me asleep on the couch. "You didn't say not to wait," he murmured, eyes scanning my face. I hadn't meant to wait. I had simply fallen asleep thinking of what used to be. He handed me a gift bag. "I brought you something." I opened it slowly. Inside was a small, cute figurine, something he'd never choose on his own. I knew immediately. She picked this. That woman. The same one whose voice still rang in my ears. I placed the figurine back in the box. "Thank you." Juan looked disappointed, his brows knitting together. "You have nothing to say to me?" I shook my head. "When you wash up, please be quiet. I'd like to rest." That was it. No drama. No confrontation. I could see he was rattled, unsure how to react to this version of me. The one who had nothing left to fight for. The next day, he went to work as usual. Around noon, he called me. "Emilia, didn't you bring me lunch?" For 3 years, I had packed his meals every single day. Even when he didn't thank me. Even when he didn't care. He preferred my food. But now I was busy. "No." I didn't have time. "Oh," he said, and the line went quiet. A few days passed. His family called from the ancestral home, asking us to attend a family dinner. I texted Juan, but he didn't reply. So I decided to go to his office and wait. His secretary looked flustered as I approached. "Ma'am, is something wrong?" she asked, reaching out as I opened the office door. But it was too late. A gray and white blur shot past me, making me stumble back with a gasp.
Akat.
A British shorthair, wearing a tiny heart-shaped scarf with peaches on it. Juan hated animals. When I once suggested adopting a dog, he refused, saying he couldn't stand the mess. But now, a cat was freely roaming his office. Before I could process that, a bright, feminine voice rang out from inside. "I brought shrimp with corn and curry chicken today. Try it later." Oh no, Bousy. How did you escape? That name, that tone, that casual comfort. A woman's voice calling out to the cat, speaking like she belonged there. I turned, and there they were walking side by side down the hallway. My husband. And her. My breath caught. I couldn't move. It was like my body froze from the inside out. All the lies, all the distance, all the nights I waited, and the days I hop-headed all led here.
To this hallway.
To this woman. To the truth. And for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to cry. I simply stood there, realizing that the version of me who would have broken down was already gone. She walked beside him, and I immediately recognized her voice, soft and teasing, the same one from the background of Juan's video. They moved together with an ease I had never seen in him, talking and laughing as if nothing else in the world mattered. Juan tilted his head slightly, listening to her with a gentleness in his eyes I had never earned in all the years I stood by his side. His smile was warm, effortless, not the guarded half-smirk he reserved for me. When the girl spotted the cat cradled in the secretary's arms, her entire face lit up. She rushed forward, her steps light, and took the creature in her arms like it was something precious. Juan's eyes didn't leave her, following her movements with quiet affection, something tender and completely unrestrained. And then, all at once, his gaze flickered past her, past the secretary, and locked onto me standing at the doorway. His smile vanished as if it had never existed. He stiffened, shoulders tensing, as if my presence alone disrupted the balance of his new world. She hadn't seen me yet. She was still too busy cuddling the cat, smiling as she held it close. "Juan, look," she said sweetly, but then she caught the shift in his expression, a silent warning that passed between them. Her head turned slowly in the direction he was staring, and when her eyes landed on me, they widened ever so slightly, then narrowed with subtle calculation. I saw her face clearly for the first time. She was young, full of life, her skin glowing, her eyes large and bright, framed with lashes that curled naturally. She was beautiful in a way that demanded attention, the kind of beauty that didn't need to try. And suddenly, I understood. She looked just like her. Juan's first love, the one everyone said was his perfect match, the elegant, gentle girl from college who died in a car accident just a day before our wedding. The weight of that history hit me harder than I expected. I had always wondered if Juan's coldness toward me stemmed from grief, but over time I convinced myself he had moved on. Seeing this girl now, I knew I had been wrong. Her resemblance was haunting. The girl turned to the secretary. "Lillian, who is she?" Her voice was deceptively innocent, but the curve of her lips told a different story. She already knew who I was. Lillian faltered, visibly uncomfortable, her eyes darting between us. "That's Chairman Lee's wife," she said at last. "Wife," the girl echoed, drawing the word out, wrapping it in mock surprise. Then she smiled a slow, soft smile, brimming with unspoken triumph. She clutched the cat a little closer, her eyes never leaving mine. She was claiming her place, and I was the unwelcome guest. Juan finally moved, stepping quickly toward me, placing himself between us. "Why did you come?" he asked, his voice taut. He looked nervous, as if afraid I would lash out, create a scene. Of course, he was protecting her. Always her. "I need to talk to you," I said calmly. Juan opened the office door and gestured for me to go inside. I stepped in, and my eyes immediately caught sight of a corner of the desk. There was a little bed made for the cat, toys strewn about like it lived here. Like they lived here. Juan followed my gaze and spoke quickly. It's not mine. The cat belongs to an employee. I'm just taking care of it temporarily. The lie was thin, and he knew it. But I didn't argue. He was already eager to move on. What did you need to say? Before I could respond, a frantic knock interrupted.
Juan.
Bausi threw up. What do we do? Her voice was breathless, worried, and without waiting, Naomi burst into the room with the cat trembling in her arms. Juan rushed to her, concern written all over his face. What happened? I don't know, she said, eyes glistening. She just started vomiting. He took the cat gently, stroking it with hands far more tender than I had ever known. Fur clung to his sleeves, but he didn't care. Let's take her to the vet, he said quickly, his tone urgent, decisive. I stood there watching, and in that moment, a memory surfaced, burning with fever, barely able to stand, asking Juan to take me to the hospital. He had frowned, irritated. Call a cab, he had said. That cather cat meant more to him than I ever had. I had barely sat down, and he was already preparing to leave. Juan, I called softly. For the first time in a long while, they both turned to look at me. Naomi's eyes were wet. Emilia, I know you have something to discuss with Chairman Lee, but Bausi is really sick. If we don't go now, she might not make it. Her voice trembled with emotion. You've never had pets, you wouldn't understand. Bausi is like my child. As if I were the villain, trying to stop them. I hadn't said a word, but I was already being judged. Juan glanced at me, his look filled with subtle blame. Emilia, we'll talk when I get back. No need, I said, standing. It's just a message. There's a family dinner tomorrow. Grandma wants us there. That was all. I turned to leave, but Juan hesitated, as if he wanted to say something else. I looked at him, tired. Hurry. Don't waste more time. The cat's waiting. Juan stared at me, confused, but said nothing. Naomi clutched the cat and urged him on. They left. That night, he didn't come home. Around midnight, a friend request appeared on my phone. The profile picture was an animated kitten. I accepted it, and a photo followed Juan, gently stroking Bausi. Sorry, the kitten's too attached to him, the message read. The words weren't an apology. They were a quiet victory. I didn't reply. I simply reminded her not to forget the family dinner. No response. I expected to see Juan at the house, but before I could leave, he was already waiting in the car outside. I came to pick you up, he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. The passenger seat was spotless. He must have cleaned it. I got in without a word, leaned back, and closed my eyes. The silence in the car was suffocating. He glanced at me now and then, his grip on the steering wheel tightening. Finally, he spoke. Emilia. Last night, Bausi was really sick. I stayed at the hospital with him. That's why I didn't return home. That was Juan's explanation, offered so casually, as if it made everything better. What struck me wasn't the content of what he said, but the fact that he said anything at all. He never used to explain his absences. If I asked too many questions, he'd brush me off or get annoyed. But now, when I stopped asking, when I stopped caring, he was the one rushing to offer explanations. Yes, I know, I said flatly. Someone already told me. His brow furrowed. Who told you? Naomi. I replied without hesitation. The cat's owner. His face twitched with something between surprise and discomfort. Naomi is my new intern, he said, almost defensively. She found the cat in front of the company building. She couldn't take it home, so I raised a hand and cut him off. I wasn't interested in the backstory he was scrambling to construct. My silence unsettled him. Emilia, he said slowly, why aren't you getting angry anymore? He sounded almost confused, like the old me who yelled and cried was more familiar, more manageable. We arrived at the Lee residence, and as I stepped out of the car, he tried to take my hand. I instinctively pulled back, but he held it tightly. I was about to protest until I saw his grandmother standing at the gate. Her frail figure, leaning slightly on a cane, brought back memories. It was she who had been the glue between us, the reason we got married. She loved me dearly, always treated me like her own granddaughter. Back when Juan and I were lost in the shadows of his grief, it was her constant efforts that pushed us toward marriage. She had said if I married her grandson, she'd be happy every day. Now she was suffering from Alzheimer's, and though she sometimes forgot names, her eyes still lit up when she saw me. I didn't want her to see the coldness that now sat between us. So I held Juan's hand and smiled. Her joy was immediate, her frail voice trembling with delight. Juan seemed relieved I didn't pull away. Inside, the house was quiet and familiar. At dinner, only his grandmother and mother were present. His mother, a woman who always kept an emotional distance, made polite conversation and asked about our lives. Eventually, as was tradition, she turned the conversation to children. "You've been married a while now," she said gently. "When are you planning to have kids?" I turned to look at Juan. In the past, he would evade the question or change the subject. But this time, while carefully removing bones from a fish, he answered with a calm voice, "We're already planning it." The words hung in the air. His mother and grandmother both beamed with delight. But I felt like someone had poured cold water down my spine. "Planning it?
Since when?"
He placed the deboned fish onto my plate without looking at me. I stared at it, stunned. What was he doing? I pushed the plate aside and replied, "We'll see. I'm not interested in children right now." Silence fell over the table. Juan's grip on my arm tightened as we walked to the car.
"Why did you say that?" he demanded.
"You know how fragile Grandma's health is." I turned to him. "Did I say something different from what you've said in the past?" He paused. "That tone of yours, you did it on purpose. You're angry, right? About that tweet." I looked at him calmly. "You don't need to explain anything to me, but you might want to hide that girl better. If Grandma sees her, it won't be good for anyone." One looked genuinely stunned. He stared at me, searching my face as if I had become someone new. Then he chuckled, a cold, bitter sound. "Wow, Amelia. You've really changed your strategy." Cold silence now, huh? Before I could respond, his phone rang. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Naomi's voice floated through the line, sweet and honeyed. "Juan, can you come with me?" I couldn't hear the rest, just fragments, but his expression darkened. He clenched his jaw, hesitated, then said quietly, "I'm coming." He gave me one last look and walked away. That night, he didn't come home. I didn't wait up. I didn't text. I didn't cry. The next morning, Naomi came to the house. She stood at my door like she owned the place. "I came to pick up some clothes for Chairman Lee," she said with a too-sweet smile. "Going on a business trip?" I asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked into the master bedroom like she belonged there, choosing clothes, folding them like it was her routine. "It's not a business trip," she said finally. That meant one thing had moved in with her. Naomi looked at me with smug satisfaction. "If you forget anything, please send it later." I didn't respond. Instead, I walked to Juan's study and grabbed a photo frame. I placed it gently on top of the folded clothes. "Don't forget this." Naomi looked down. It wasn't a picture of us. It wasn't even of her and Juan. Her smile faltered. "Who is she?" she asked. "His first love," I replied softly. "Juan values that photo a lot. Be careful not to break it." Her expression shifted. I could see the confusion, the insecurity. Maybe for the first time, she realized she wasn't the first or the only. Just the latest. Now that I think about it, Naomi really did resemble Juan's first love in some ways, but compared to the previous ones, she still fell short. I said it out loud once, mostly to myself, but Naomi heard it. Her smug smile froze on her lips, and she left, clearly embarrassed. I thought that would be the end of it, but apparently, she brooded over it and later sent me a message, clearly trying to regain control. "I know what you're doing, trying to turn Juan against me. But I won't fall into your trap." I didn't reply. To Naomi, my silence felt like provocation. It pushed her over the edge. Over the next few days, she started flooding social media with carefully edited photos of her and Juan, posting them with poetic captions like, What bliss it is to be your refuge, and love doesn't need validation when hearts understand. Her efforts to appear gentle and adored were almost amusing. I knew what she was doing. It wasn't love. It was warfare. So, the next time she posted another photo, I couldn't help myself. I messaged her, just one sentence. Everything you send me is evidence of an affair. You're the mistress, and Juan is being unfaithful.
She didn't reply.
Minutes later, all the photos were gone. I laughed. Not because I had won anything, but because she had humiliated herself in public trying to hurt someone who no longer cared. Everyone watching knew she had lost her cool, yet she was the only one who didn't see it. A few days passed, and I ran into her again completely by chance. Joel, an old friend and university professor, had invited me to lunch and a walk through the campus. There happened to be an art festival going on, and Naomi stood under the welcome banner, apparently volunteering at the entrance. When she saw me, her expression faltered before she quickly composed herself and bowed slightly. "Good afternoon. This way, please," she said with polite detachment. After she walked away, Joel asked, "Do you know her?" I smiled. "I've seen her with Juan." That was all I said, but Joel's face shifted. He knew me well enough to understand the weight behind those words. "You and Juan," he murmured. I knew what he was thinking. All my friends had seen how much I once loved Juan. And now, standing there calm and unconcerned, it felt like I was the one offering comfort, not the one needing it. "Don't let this ruin our day," I told him. He smiled with a mix of sadness and admiration, but shortly after, work called him away. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'll make it up to you with dinner soon." "Don't worry," I replied. The encounter with Naomi faded from my mind. I got busy, and nearly a week later, Joel called with an oddly serious tone. "Emilia, can you come to Baylor right now?" He didn't sound like someone asking for lunch. I arrived at the address and entered the private room. To my surprise, Joel was there, and so were Juan, Naomi, and a few others I recognized vaguely. Joel stood up as I entered. "Now that both sides are here, why not ask directly?" he said. Juan sat silently, his face unreadable. Naomi avoided my eyes, fidgeting with her hands. I listened as Joel recounted what had happened. He had attended a birthday party for a colleague, where Juan and Naomi also showed up. Joel didn't pay them much attention until one approached him and asked why Naomi's application for a postgraduate scholarship had been rejected. One claimed Naomi was a dedicated student and hoped Joel would reconsider.
Joel was surprised.
Naomi had applied to study under him, but he had rejected her. When he stood by his decision, Juan kept pressing. Joel remained polite but firm. That's when Naomi stood and said, "Professor Joel, are you rejecting me because of Emilia? I saw you two together at the art festival. I don't know what she told you about me, but it's unfair to let your personal bias affect my future." The entire room had gone silent. Juan's expression darkened, and he asked Joel directly if what Naomi said was true. Joel had replied simply, "Emilia and I are old friends. That's all." Naomi had then leaned against Juan, tears shimmering in her eyes. "So, it was Emilia who asked you to reject me." Joel blinked, stunned. "What the hell?" he muttered. After that, he called me in to settle it face to face. I listened to the whole thing and was just as speechless as Joel. He looked at Naomi, his usual gentle demeanor now replaced with stern clarity. "The reason I didn't accept you had nothing to do with Emilia," he said. "Don't act like a manipulative flirt, throwing blame without evidence." Naomi refused to accept it. "Why not? My grades are excellent. I have the highest GPA. On what basis did you reject me?" Joel's face turned serious. "Because I do not accept students who lack basic integrity." His voice cut like a blade. Naomi's face drained of color. Everyone else in the room looked away, clearly uncomfortable. Joel, having delivered his judgment, returned to his calm self. "Come on, Emilia. I'll treat you to lunch." I nodded and turned to leave with him, but just as I reached the door, Naomi's voice rang out behind me, shaking with fury. "You talk about principles, but are you really any better?" The room froze. I turned around slowly. Naomi was trembling, her anger giving her a strange kind of confidence. You pretend to be the victim, Emilia, but weren't you the one who forced Juan to marry you after his ex died? You used his grandmother. You played the good girl, but you were never good enough for him. Her words echoed in the room. Juan didn't move. Joel's jaw clenched. I stepped forward, calmly, slowly. Naomi, I said, my voice steady. You can twist stories however you like, but don't ever insult the one person who actually tried to protect that relationship, Juan's grandmother. She's the only one who truly wanted us to be happy. If using her love to hold on to a man who never loved me is my biggest sin, then yes, I'm guilty. But at least I never pretended to be someone's innocent refuge while stabbing others behind their backs. Naomi stood frozen, unsure how to respond. I turned to Juan, who still hadn't said a word. You've always made your choices, Juan. Just be sure you can live with them. And with that, I left. I didn't look back. Emilia is a married woman, and yet, aren't you having a shady relationship with her? Naomi's words sliced through the air and left the room in frozen silence. Joel slowly turned toward her, his brows furrowed in disbelief. Naomi's eyes burned with hatred as if her outburst had been bottled up and now finally released unfiltered. What's wrong? Did the truth hit you? She snapped, her voice rising. A crystal glass dropped from someone's trembling hand, shattering loudly against the floor. Naomi flinched and looked down at the shards, her reflection broken into fragments. She opened her mouth to say more, but whatever words followed were drowned by the ice in my eyes. She began to tremble slightly and instinctively inched closer to Juan, seeking safety. When she was just a step away from me, Juan stepped between us and held out a hand. Emilia, that's enough, he said, his tone sharp with reprimand. How ironic. Naomi had just accused me in front of everyone, smeared my name and Joel's, and he had said nothing. But the moment I lifted a finger, he found his voice only to protect her. I looked at him, cold and unflinching. I know you're still angry with me. Let's just stop this peacefully, he added, as if trying to sound reasonable. I laughed, a bitter sound that hung in the air like poison. Juan, just because you're disgusting doesn't mean I am too. You repulse me. His face went pale. Without waiting for another word, I stepped forward, grabbed Naomi by the wrist, and in one swift motion, slapped her. Once. Then again. The sharp sound echoed. She hadn't even had time to scream. One slap, for seducing my husband. Another for slandering my friend. Naomi staggered back, clutching her cheek, stunned. Her eyes welled up with tears of rage and humiliation. What you've tried so hard to take, I said quietly, is something I no longer want. You don't need to thank me, I am giving it to you. I turned to Juan and smiled, a twisted thing full of mockery. He grabbed my wrist, trembling. Emilia, what are you saying? I'm saying I don't love you anymore, I answered. We're getting a divorce. Each word dropped like a stone, heavy and final. After leaving, Joel quietly offered to take me home. He didn't speak for a while, as if letting me breathe, but eventually, his voice broke the silence. You didn't mean what you said about the divorce, did you? I gave a small laugh. I wasn't speaking out of anger. And you don't have to feel guilty. This has nothing to do with you. I paused, then added, love is like a glass of water with a tiny crack. It leaks slowly every day until there's nothing left. Juan never noticed. He never tried to fix it. So, eventually it emptied. Joel nodded, no longer trying to console me. He simply wished me luck. When I got home, I immediately began sorting through the things I had prepared. One hadn't been around much lately, which made it easier to pack and discard what no longer belonged. Just as I finished stacking the papers on the coffee table, the phone rang. It was Juan's mother. So, what tantrum are you throwing at Juan now? She asked without so much as a greeting. Of course she knew we were fighting. Emilia, you need to be less selfish. Who can put up with a woman like you? Her voice was sharp and full of scorn. Our relationship had always been strained, partly because Juan never truly liked me and mostly because she had forced the marriage to begin with. She went on, giving me a list of all the things I should be doing for Juan, all the sacrifices I was supposed to make. I couldn't take it anymore. "Ma'am," I said, cutting her off. "Excuse me," she replied, startled. "If you can't stand me, tell your son to divorce me," I said flatly. She spluttered, trying to regain control, but I ended the call. Half an hour later, Juan came home. He looked like he had rushed, maybe hoping to salvage what remained. His eyes landed on my suitcase and the divorce agreement on the table. Panic flickered in his eyes. "Emilia, stop this nonsense," he said, trying to sound calm. "Look," I pointed at the papers. "They're signed. I just need yours." He hesitated. "Are you serious? If it's about Naomi, I'll cut ties with her. I'll send her away. Just say the word." That was the problem. He still thought Naomi was the reason. He didn't understand that it wasn't about her. It was about everything years of neglect, of being invisible, of enduring cold smiles and colder nights. I didn't respond. I pushed past him, opened the door, and left. "Don't forget to sign it," I said over my shoulder. Of course, he didn't sign. But news of our separation spread quickly. His friends came to talk, to persuade, to reason. I ignored them all. Juan, meanwhile, began his own campaign to win me back. At first, I noticed flowers arriving at the studio where I had been helping a friend with research. Then came lunchboxes filled with food I once loved. None were signed, but I knew exactly who had sent them. My friend looked at me one afternoon, raising an eyebrow. "Juan." I neither confirmed nor denied. "If he cared so much, why didn't he act earlier?" he said with a sarcastic chuckle. He had seen my struggle before I admitted it to myself. I threw all the flowers in the trash. As for the food, there were stray cats that hung around the garden. I left it out for them. Better they enjoy it than me waste time remembering what I'd lost. That's when I ran into Naomi again. "Emilia," she hissed, her tone bitter. "Are you satisfied now?" She glared at me like I had ruined her perfect fantasy, as if I had robbed her of something she had already claimed. I looked at her without emotion. "What are you talking about? He hasn't been the same since you left. Do you really think you're so important?" I smiled. "You have him now, don't you? Isn't that what you wanted?" Naomi's expression cracked, just a little. "You'll regret this. You'll realize what a mistake you've made." I shook my head.
"No, Naomi."
I regretted staying far longer than I ever will leaving. It wasn't a devastating blow. I didn't stagger or gasp. I didn't feel the need to cry or shout. But it surprised me because despite everything, I had not expected her to play that card. Naomi stood there, chin lifted with calculated pride, watching me closely for a reaction. "I thought you should know," she said softly, her hand resting lightly on her abdomen as if already assuming the role of martyr. I didn't speak. I just looked at her. She shifted uncomfortably under my gaze, perhaps realizing that silence could be far more unnerving than the outburst she had anticipated. I wasn't the woman I used to be. She was too late. "Is that why you came? To deliver news or to make a demand?" I asked calmly. She blinked. "I came because you deserve to know. Juan's still your husband, even if you're getting a divorce." I smiled, just slightly. "You should take that up with him, not me." She frowned, clearly thrown off. "You don't care? Whether or not you're pregnant isn't something I can verify, nor is it my responsibility to respond. If it's true, then I hope you'll both find a way to be happy." She wasn't expecting grace. She was expecting a fight. So when she didn't get it, she looked disappointed. Her pride didn't let her leave without a final strike. "He was planning something for your anniversary, wasn't he?" I stayed quiet. "I guess that's ruined now," she added with a satisfied smile before turning away. I let her go. When she was out of sight, I turned and walked back upstairs. I didn't rush to call Juan or confront him. I didn't even cry. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling for hours, trying to sort through my own heart. Whether Naomi was telling the truth didn't change the fact that the past few weeks had felt like a lie waiting to collapse. One had seemed genuine. His eyes had softened. His voice had become gentle. He had started planning things, small surprises, moments I thought he was incapable of. I had almost believed. But almost isn't enough. The next morning, Juan showed up with breakfast. He smiled like nothing had happened and handed me my favorite drink, still warm. "I got it just how you like it," he said. The shop near the corner finally started using oat milk again. I took it but said nothing. He sat beside me, still smiling. "Are you free tonight? I want to show you something." "Did Naomi tell you she visited me yesterday?" I asked quietly. His smile faltered.
She did.
"She said she told you something upsetting." "She said she's pregnant." He didn't respond right away. His lips parted, then closed again. Finally, he let out a breath. "I don't know if it's true. But she said it to you as well." He nodded.
Yes.
"But I haven't done anything with her in a long time. Not since before the hospital. I swear." "So, you're saying she's lying?" "I'm saying I don't know. I want to believe she is. But even if she's not, it doesn't change what I've been feeling for you." That was what made it harder. Not the lie, but the possibility that he meant every word he said now after I had already stopped needing them. "Juan," I said, setting the cup down. "We were supposed to get divorced. We only stayed together for your grandmother's sake." He reached across the table, took my hand. "I know. But I thought maybe you could feel it too. That things were changing." "They were," I admitted. "But now they're not. You're punishing me for something that hasn't even been proven." "No," I said. "I'm choosing myself. That's not punishment. That's freedom." He didn't try to stop me. That day, I packed quietly. There was no dramatic exit. No final fight. I left the keys on the kitchen counter and walked out with one small suitcase. Juan stood by the doorway, watching me go. He didn't cry, didn't beg. But his eyes followed me until I disappeared. Days passed. He sent no messages, no flowers, no food. And that silence, that absence, somehow meant more than anything he could have said. My life settled into something quieter, simpler. I went back to my small studio apartment and started fresh new sheets, new mugs, even a new lamp. Joel came by occasionally, always bringing tea and never asking too many questions. One evening, as we were talking, he casually mentioned, "I heard Naomi dropped out." "Really?" I asked, not really surprised.
Yeah.
Turns out the pregnancy was fake. She used it to keep Juan from signing the divorce. I raised an eyebrow. How did he find out? She slipped, said something that didn't match up, and when he asked to go to a doctor's appointment with her, she avoided it. Eventually, she admitted the truth. I didn't say anything. Joel looked at me. "You okay?" "Yes," I said. "Actually, I think I am." And for once, it wasn't a mask. It was the truth. I looked at Naomi in disbelief, her eyes glowing with arrogant pride, as if she had just delivered the final blow that would shatter my life. I blinked slowly, not because I was hurt, but because I found it ridiculous. "Oh, congratulations," I said calmly, then turned to leave. But Naomi grabbed my arm, her grip too tight for someone pretending to be a victim. "I told you I'm pregnant. Didn't you hear me?" I shook her off immediately. "What does that have to do with me? If the baby's Juan's, then go tell him. I'm not the father." My voice rose without my realizing it, more out of exasperation than shock. Naomi dropped to her knees. "He doesn't want the baby. I don't have anyone else to turn to. So I came to you." Her desperation wasn't touching, it was theatrical, overacted, meant to manipulate. "Looking for me? What do you expect me to do?" I asked coldly. "Emilia, I know I wronged you. But this child didn't choose any of this. Don't let him suffer.
Please talk to Juan."
Let me have this baby." Her voice cracked as she clutched the hem of my coat, sobbing and trembling. I stood frozen for a moment, overwhelmed not by compassion but by disbelief at her shamelessness, her ability to twist herself into whatever shape she thought would win. Then suddenly Juan's car screeched to a halt. He jumped out, scanned the scene, and went straight to Naomi. "What are you doing here?" he barked. Naomi reached for him. "Juan, please. Let me have this baby." He turned to me, flustered, searching for answers. Emmy, this is your mess. Clean it up yourself, I said coldly. Grandma is still asleep. Don't wake her. Juan's face went pale. Naomi began to cry louder, her sobs echoing through the courtyard. Juan, you can't ignore me. This is your child. He grabbed her by the arm. I told you, I'll compensate you. But stop interfering with my family. But this is your son. I won't recognize him. Juan's voice was firm, final, and so frigid it sliced through the air. Naomi staggered back like she'd been slapped. For the first time, I saw her break completely, her mouth opened, but no sound came. Her pride, her schemes, everything had crumbled. But before anyone could say another word, a voice rang out from behind us. What's going on? Why all the noise? We all turned. Grandma was standing in the doorway, her eyes clouded with confusion. In that split second, Naomi did something none of us expected. She ran toward her and dropped to her knees. Grandma, I'm pregnant. The baby is Juan's. Time froze. The air stopped. I reached out, but it was too late. What are you saying? Grandma's voice trembled. Juan already has a wife. You're getting a divorce, right?
Juan lo besme.
I'm the one he truly loves. As those words left her lips, I saw the light drain from Grandma's eyes. Her hands began to tremble, her legs gave out, and before anyone could catch her, she collapsed backward. Everything exploded into chaos. Grandma! Juan and I shouted at the same time. The ambulance sirens split the air as the paramedics rushed her inside. We waited for hours in the hospital. Juan sat slumped on a bench, head in his hands, not speaking. When his mother arrived, she didn't ask a single question. She simply slapped him, hard and without hesitation. You idiot! I gave birth to a man with no spine. Juan didn't respond. His guilt was a physical weight, visible in the sag of his shoulders. She turned to me, as if wanting to say something, but the words stuck. Instead, she asked quietly, How is she? They're monitoring her, I said. No one said another word. Time passed like molasses until finally the doctor came out and told us she had stabilized. You can go in to see her, but please don't stress her out, he warned. Juan and his mother rushed in. I followed quietly. Lying on the bed, pale and thin, Grandma looked fragile. But her eyes fluttered open, and her gaze moved across the room until it settled on me. Emilia, come here. Her voice was weak but firm. I hesitated, but her trembling hand reached out, and I couldn't ignore it. I stepped forward, and when our fingers touched, she gave mine a light squeeze. My child, how did you endure so much pain without telling me anything? My eyes filled with tears. I had no answer.
Guilt gnawed at me.
If I had spoken earlier, maybe she wouldn't have suffered such a shock. It wasn't your fault, she said softly, reading my thoughts. It was Juan's. He failed you. Juan stepped forward, guilt painted across his face. He knelt beside her bed.
I'm sorry, Grandma.
If this is all my fault. Her eyes didn't soften. She looked at him with a mix of love and crushing disappointment. It was clear she still loved him, but she couldn't shield him anymore. A few minutes later, we were asked to let her rest. As we left the room, Juan's mother turned to him with a face carved from stone. You created this mess. Now fix it. And until you do, don't show your face in front of her again. Juan nodded, his voice absent, his mind clearly elsewhere. I stood there, silent, my heart heavy not with love or grief, but with the aching exhaustion that comes when everything has finally collapsed and you're still standing. 6 months had passed since the ink dried on the divorce papers and the final words were exchanged under the shadow of heartbreak. The wind that morning felt gentler than usual as Emilia stood outside Grandma Lee's funeral hall, dressed in black, a bouquet of white lilies trembling lightly in her hand. The ceremony was quiet, dignified, filled with respectful silence. Juan was there too, standing across the room, looking thinner, older. Their eyes met for a fleeting second. There was no anger, no bitterness, just a distant familiarity that time hadn't erased. After the funeral, Emilia didn't wait for conversations or lingering glances. She placed the flowers by Grandma's resting place and walked away into the sunlight, where Joel was waiting at the curb. He opened the car door with a gentle smile, offering no questions. They drove off quietly, a new chapter waiting to be written. Life didn't change overnight, but the weight on her chest began to ease, slowly, day by day. Emilia poured herself into her work, started journaling again, and learned to smile with sincerity. She no longer waited for apologies or explanations. Closure came not in dramatic confessions, but in the soft unfolding of ordinary days. On her birthday a year later, a letter arrived. The handwriting was unmistakably Juan's. Inside was a simple card. "Happy birthday, Emmy. I hope the sky's always blue where you are." She folded it quietly, placed it in her drawer, and felt neither pain nor joy, only peace. Years passed. Emilia opened a small art studio, where she taught children to paint and dream. She lived in a modest apartment above the studio, surrounded by color and laughter. Joel remained by her side, not as a substitute for what she had lost, but as someone who never tried to replace it. They didn't rush. Love, when it finally returned, came as a gentle hand on the back, a warm drink on a cold night, a shared glance that said, "I see you." Juan, on the other hand, left the city. Rumors said he moved to a quiet town near the coast and opened a bookstore. He was said to spend his days reading poetry, talking little, and occasionally staring out the window at the sea. One summer day, by pure coincidence or perhaps fate, Emilia and Joel visited that coastal town. While browsing a small market, she passed by a man arranging books in a window. Their eyes met. This time they both smiled. No words were exchanged. They simply nodded, two lives that had once been entangled now running parallel, each having found their own peace. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light on the quiet streets, Emilia slipped her hand into Joel's. She didn't look back. The past had shaped her, broken her, strengthened her. But it didn't define her anymore. She was no longer someone's wife, someone's daughter-in-law, or someone left behind. She was simply Emilia. And that, finally, was enough. Cherry Blossom, thank you, from Universe of Love in Anime Cherry Blossom. Thank you so much for watching the story until the end. Emilia's journey wasn't just about heartbreak and loss, it was about finding herself again, learning to let go of the past, and gently embracing a future that didn't need to be perfect, just honest. If her story touched your heart, if you felt the weight of her choices or the softness of her healing, we hope you'll carry a piece of her strength with you too. Sparkling Heart. If you enjoyed this emotional journey and want to hear more stories like this of love, resilience, and quiet triumphs, don't forget to like, subscribe to our channel Universe of Love and Anime, and share this video with someone who might need a story just like Emilia's. Your support means the world to us, and it helps keep these stories alive. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and never stop believing in second chances. Sunrise Sparkles.